Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order today's today's committee of the whole meeting for February 11th, 2025. The town of Hinton respectfully acknowledges that it is located on the First Peoples traditional lands. We recognize this traditional territory to show respect and understanding to those who walk this land since time immemorial. Today, we uphold our ongoing responsibility to work together in the spirit of the intent of the treaties with all the First Peoples and nations that call this place home. The town expresses gratitude for the opportunity to build a better community on these sacred lands for generations to come. And with that, I'd like to call the meeting to order. First order of business is adoption of the agenda. Council, are there any changes to the agenda? Anderson?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to seek consensus of committee to add item 4.4 fire guarding application update from administration. Thank you.
Council, we have a motion to add 4.4. Any comments or questions?
Oh, no, I appreciate the addition. The community needs to hear this, so thank you.
Okay. There's no comments or questions from council. We'll call the question to add item 4.4. All those in favor, sorry, as soon as you get it in. That's okay. Council, if you could. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, council, there's a motion to add 4.4 fire guarding application. If there's no comments or questions, please vote now. And this is in favor, so that's carried unanimously. Okay, any other changes from the council agenda? Nothing else from council administration. Are there any changes?
There's nothing from it.
Okay, thank you. Councilor House.
I'd like to move that we adopt the agenda as amended.
You, Councilor House. Just wait for that to come up. Motion that committee adopt the agenda as amended. There's no comments or questions. Please vote no. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to agenda item 3, citizens minute with council. Are there any citizens who are registered to present to council today?
No, there's not. I thought there would have been, but he's not.
Okay.
Do you want me to talk about the food? No. Did you want to speak to a minute with council?
Yeah, but what would you?
Yeah,
Not what he's gonna say.
Thank you. I just want to tell you that I volunteer at the food bank, the Hinton Food Bank, when I do a presentation. And what we've been doing is we've been able to go into the schools and we've been able to go into presentations and show the students what a box size of a 1-2 is. And so we show that to the students and we explain to them about the food bank, and they've got good questions for us. And we also go with numbers. And so we put numbers on the board to show how many people use the food bank, and the statistics are from 2020 to 2024. And so you're seeing like a large number, a big number of increase in the use of our food bank. And if I may say, I'm grateful to the community that they are donating to the food bank, and we've had food bank drives in our schools. And the competition the kids do is either for pizza, or they also have more gym time that the kids are able to have. And I would just like to say, as a citizen of this community, thank you that we're helping feed these people and children. the students there are also wanting to volunteer, which is very, very close, as you are aware, to my heart, about getting students up to volunteer at our food bank. So I guess that wasn't what it was directed for the minute with the council, but I think you as mayor and council need to be aware about what our students are doing in our schools and about the awareness about the food bank that we're getting them to know. So here I am with the minute with the council, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cameron.
Yeah.
Ms. Cindy Campbell, you have. Gary's green card. For the record.
She does. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
All right, since that's our only guest, I'm assuming there's no one else who wants to be minute with council. So that would bring us down to reports from administration, item 4.1, RCMP Civilian Governance Regional Policing Committee. With the administration.
Good afternoon, committee. This afternoon, we have a report in front of you, the impetus of which is the amendment to the Police Act, requiring that communities either establish a regional committee or seek an exception to move forward with a municipal committee. So the regions are based off of the present RCMP districts, so South, Central, East, and West. Hinton falls within the West District, and our municipalities of similar size that would be put forward to be part of our regional committee. Obviously ourselves, Drayton Valley, Edson, Peace River, and Whitecourt. So it's quite a span. Ultimately, the direction that we're looking for today is that we seek consensus to enter into the regional committee, subject to the participation of 3 other municipalities. Obviously, you cannot be a regional committee of 1. Peace River had their direction from their council recently. They've decided to go regional. Edson is also meeting tonight, and we have a follow-up meeting on the 13th to see what the other communities have done. The reason we've presented this option this way is because it will allow us to kind of run 2 parallel pathways at the same time. We can continue to sort of wait for the others to figure out what they're doing, region or not. With this motion, that would allow us to seek the exception from the minister, should that be required based on lack of willingness or participation from other members of the region. I can take any questions about the committees and their composition at this time.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wade, Mayor Nissen, Councilor Race, and Councilor Taylor.
Thank you, and through the chair to committee. On this issue, I've attended a number of provincial briefings and virtual town halls, specifically about the establishment of these committees. And while reading the legislation and the report, it does suggest that for populations of our size, a regional policing committee is necessary. However, I've been told through a number of these events repeatedly that communities like ours in that 10,000 population range who already have policing committees are effectively shoo-ins for the exemption to continue doing a municipal committee just under the new legislation and the new format. So if we were to choose to maintain our own policing committee, just the town of Hinton, I would expect that we would very highly likely get the exemption, and we would be able to transition our existing committee into what the new structure needs to be. There is new requirements, and perhaps Ms. Way can speak to some of the membership requirements. I don't know that they've been finalized, but there are provincial members that will have to sit on the board, and there are some security requirements for board members. So the difference between the new policing committee and the police town liaison committee that we have today is a little bit of who the members can and must be, who the membership can and cannot be, as well as the requirement for enhanced security and background checks. So it is possible that finding board members for this committee could be more challenging given the enhanced security check. It's not just a standard security check, as I understand it, is an enhanced one. My experience with those is they're quite administratively tedious. So it could be a barrier for finding board members should we go on our own committee. Those are my thoughts, and I'd like to hear a little bit more from Ms. Way and from council before I decide one way or another. Thank you.
Through to Mayor Nissen and the remainder of the committee. That's correct. So we'll start with the enhanced security check. That requires your typical criminal record check, a law enforcement inquiry record check, and that as well as an open source inquiry. And in limited circumstances, they may have to travel for a security interview. So for the first push or the initial kickoff of these committees, the province has committed to paying that portion. Should we choose to go the regional route as well as the municipal route, it looks like they're gonna cover that for the first initial. Anytime we have to put new board members on, that would be our burden to carry. With that said, they anticipate that it would be absolute maximum of around $400 per person, including if they had to go for their interview, excluding travel costs. With respect to who can be on and who can't be on the committee, these are designed to be civil governance committees. So it's not prohibited to have a member of council, but there definitely should be, the legislation is written that there should be public representation on those committees as well. With respect to the provincial members who would attend, that's still being fleshed out currently. I think right now they might be waiting to see who forms before they're assigning and figuring out what the level of service from the RCMP would be to attend those meetings. If there's other questions or if I've missed anything, I can certainly speak to those.
Thank you.
Chair, may I follow up?
Yeah, go ahead. If that's a follow-up, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, and through the chair to Ms. Way. The last briefing that I saw on this, they mentioned that councillors could sit on the board, but could not be voting members of the board. Is that still the circumstance as you understand it, or is that still probably up in the air? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Excellent question. That's one of the ones where our group, we met directly with the province, and that's the language that we're seeking clarity on. So it is very much the intent that it be members of the public, but as it's currently written, members of council can participate on the committee as a voting member.
Okay, good, Mayor Nissen, okay, thank you. Councillor Reese and then Councillor Hiller.
Thank you, Chair. So administration, were you able to go back and look at our past policing committee bylaw 1042? It seems like everything that we did on that committee is what they're asking for here. So were you able to go look at that?
Thank you, Councillor Rice, through to the remainder of committee. I did look at it. There are a couple legislative changes. For example, our membership would not currently meet the requirements because it's mostly members of administration and council. Like a older version that we've had many moons ago. Yeah, that would be more suited in terms of membership. And the intent of the committees are generally the same, with a greater tie to the province in terms of advocacy.
Because the one we had in 2013, 2014, met just about all the requirements, made up of people from the community, the RCMP bylaw, and then we had 2 councillors sit but not voting on it. Can I just say one more thing, sir?
Go ahead.
Going regional, the one thing that concerns me is being part of something bigger, other municipalities involved. They may have larger concerns than us, and then we are kind of lost in the middle. So just wanted to ask, it seems that administration is leaning towards regional, and why would that be?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Rice. I definitely see the benefits, and then sees the benefit to regional in terms of that advocacy approach and tie direct to the province in terms of overall RCMP level of service. With that said, I can understand why a municipality like ours, who has done the good work of having our own municipal committee, might be desirable, especially to deal with things specific to our community. With that said, there's nothing that precludes us from joining the regional committee now or joining it later. We can also leave the regional committee if we determine that that's not really working for us. It's not meeting the needs. Some communities, Whitecourt, they are looking at having both. I think that's administrative duplication, but of course, administration will serve the will of council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Race, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Haas, and Mayor Nisson.
Well, I was thinking we got a pretty good thing going. We got like a response of our CMP staff sergeant, and then we get together periodically and we talk about priorities and then we get our way. Are we gonna lose, if we keep that and we go with this and we get a whole bunch of provincial add-ons to the committee and then we don't get the vote? Do we lose autonomy? Seems like a recipe for losing autonomy to the province, to me.
Through to Councillor Taylor. Originally, that was my perception as well. However, through the development of the bylaws, which would be created with the joint members of the committee, the way that the committee will do business will be sorted out through that bylaw process. So I think there will be room to discuss, what the priorities might be. There's the components of the safety plan, that the community safety plans that everyone will have to work through. So there will be moments for your voice to be heard. However, how directly it will impact us specifically local to Hinton is yet to be seen.
Well, like, can I follow up? Like, how many people on average will be on this committee and how many get the vote? And how many will be from Hinton that get the vote?
So based
And how
on,
many will be from the province that get the vote?
based on the current legislation as it's written, the members can, or the number of members is only up to 7. So 1 from each community member, possibly 2, but that would be decided again by the bylaws and how many communities join, right? So if it's just us and Edson, let's say, then potentially we're looking at 2 from each community.
I'm talking about keeping what we've got and going with the municipal policing committee and asking for an exemption.
Oh,
Well, how much sort of members would that look like?
yeah, so you can have up to 7. However, the minister is able to, if they so choose, to place 1 provincial member, a voting member, at a ratio of 1 to 3. So if we have 3 members, he could decide to take up one of those seats with someone from the province.
Would that be an RCMP or do we? don't know
Unclear yet.
without it? Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Haas, and then Mayor Nisson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I'd like to committee seek consensus for the exemption for the regional policing committee in favor of the municipal policing committee. If I can then speak to that. I appreciate the clarification this evening, because what I'm hearing is it's one or the other. And I do feel like we would get diluted with other communities involved. We've done a really good job, I think, statistically and from our quarterly meetings, or quarterly reports from our staff sergeant, that we are managing well our crime, whereas other communities, I don't believe, are in the same position. And I really, I think, attach that to the fact that we do have a municipal policing committee to have those conversations. We have good rapport with our RCMP, and I'm just worried we're gonna lose that with being a regional. And I realize we can go in and come back out, but I'd prefer, I think, to not find out. And then get lost in the weeds of other communities' crime issues. So that's why I'm looking for that exemption. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. Thank you for the direction. Mayor Nisson, we do, just a reminder to committee, we do have direction requests on the table.
Thank you, and thank you for the direction, Councillor Haas. I'm likely in support of it, but I do have a few more questions and comments. Through the chair to administration, Ms. Way, you mentioned that some regions or some municipalities are playing the transition from the regional to a municipal community potential. Now, again, in the briefings that I've attended, I was led to believe that the potential for us to ask for the exemption up front existed, but if we were to join a regional committee initially, we would be unlikely to get an exemption in the future. It sounded, from my perspective, that it was going to be easier to attempt a municipal committee and then get added into a regional committee if we were to be unsuccessful than the other way around. Has that changed in your discussions so far with the province and the follow-up on this?
Thank you for that question. I wouldn't say so much that it has changed. We did explicitly ask the question, at any time you can enter and at any time you can leave, with the caveat that when you do choose to leave, you do need that exemption from the minister. They did not speak to how challenging that would or would not be. I think right now, a lot of how that flushes out is gonna depend on where people choose to be at present.
Okay, thank you. And then you mentioned the membership makeup a little bit of these committees and mentioned to Councillor Taylor's point that we are adding provincial members from outside our community, but that is mandated by the legislation, so we have no choice in that matter. And that is ultimately, to Councillor Grace's point, what the difference is between this new committee and what our previous policing committees have been. Has there been any indication from the province who, should we go with a municipal committee, would carry the costs for the provincial appointed members? Any idea who would pay their per diem? We have no idea where these people would be coming from, that kind of thing.
Again, thank you for the question. The legislation is currently silent on that. That did come up in our meeting. So I expect that's something that they will be pushing out to us in the coming weeks. Here again, that's why we went with the recommended action that we did this evening, is because everything is still rolling out. There's still a lot of question marks.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Way. Well, in that case, Chair, I'd like to speak to committee. I'm in favor of this motion. I think from what I've heard so far, it is to our advantage to maintain our municipal policing committee. We are doing a good job. We have good rapport between the town, our community, and our police service. And I would like to see that maintained in our community. But in addition to that, from what I've heard about this process, I believe it will be easier for us to attempt our own committee to go for the exemption. And should that not be successful due to the costs of provincial members or the burdens of the enhanced security checks or even the costs for those, which will be different from our current policing committee, should those be burdens, I do believe it'll be easier for us to join a regional board that has those things in place as this legislation rolls out. But from a cost perspective, I also generally believe that having to pay community members per diem and travel to go to a regional meeting that could be extraordinarily far away isn't much cheaper than just paying the additional costs for our own members in town who don't have to travel. So thank you, Councillor Haas, for putting this motion forward, and I will be supporting it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Nissen. Committee, I don't have anyone else in queue. Councillor Taylor.
I support it too. Aren't the provincial people likely to be like provincial bureaucrats of some sort that would come with their own funding? Or are they gonna be like members of the public?
Thank you for that question, Councillor Taylor. During the discussions that we had, that was not made clear. However, they did at a certain point use the term members. So therefore, that has me thinking that it'll be actual RCMP, like a Shiloh, right?
So it won't be a cost.
Pardon me?
It probably won't be a cost.
At the local level, if like our detachment commander, if staff sergeant, you know, she's already here. If the minister also chooses to appoint a provincial member to our municipal board at a ratio of 1-3, unknown who that could be and where they would be coming from.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Haas.
Yeah, I just wanna add, I guess, and I think I understand why the province is doing what it's doing, but it's. Our RCMP members, staff sergeants, they already consult one another and work together on a policing. I mean, we have a regional staff sergeant that also, you know, so I'm really somewhat confused why the province is even suggesting this, you know, because it does. It adds so much, I guess, again, that dilution of each community, and the whole idea is communities wanted to be more in communication with their RCMP, and I mean, if one community is having difficulty, then it's that responsibility of that community to do that. So this is again why I think this is just, there's no need for it. We've got a good track record in our community, and you know, and I think it's an added expense and all those unknowns that really also don't sit well with me, you know, for the costs and things like that. So I know I'm speaking again to it. It's just, I don't know, baffles me why we're creating a regional policing committee, you know, when each community is totally different, so, thank you.
Councilor Haas, Mayor Nissim.
Thank you, and through the chair to committee, just to speak to Councillor Haas's point, and I can't speak for the province or put words in their mouth, but from my perspective in going through trying to understand how this process has come about and the why of it all, I found out that Hinton's been doing extraordinarily well on this front. We've had a town police liaison committee in place for a very long time. We meet regularly, we have these discussions, and I believe it's already been mentioned in this meeting that our crime rates compared to other communities in our region are different and much lower. We're ahead of the curve in the province, and I think a lot of communities don't have a committee in place and they're not doing these things, and ultimately that's why it's coming about. Unfortunately, from my perspective, we're just getting scooped up. Yes, it's some added cost, but we're getting scooped up because, yeah, we were doing the good thing already at the efficient cost, but now they got to make everybody do it, and we all have to do it in a standardized way. But to council's credit, we have been doing a good job, and that's why we kind of were led to believe that the exemptions exist for communities just like ours who have been doing a good job. They want us to continue doing a good job. There's just a new standard to meet is all. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Race.
Thank you, sir. I'll be supporting this motion. I think right now, the only thing that we're lacking is we need just a little bit more citizen input on the existing committee we have right now. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Race. Maybe anything further? Seeing nothing from the committee, we will call the question the direction that committee seek consensus for exemption from the regional policing committee in favor of a municipal policing committee. Any of you could please vote now. And that is also carried unanimously. There's nothing further for the review from Councilor Bailey.
Just a bit curious as to why I'm just seeing this November 20th letter now. It was sent around previously and I missed it.
Administration.
Why would it take 2 months for me to see a letter like this? Maybe I missed it.
Through the chair, I'm not sure if we put this in for information correspondence at the time, but they've communicated on this topic quite often for the last year. So this is just another communication about this legislation change.
Thank you, Councilor Baylor. Maybe anything further on the RCMP civilian governance matter before we move on? Okay, so nothing, we'll move on to item 4.2, our own land discussion. Commission?
Thank you, Chair. So we're bringing this topic back at the last committee of the whole that we had discussed it. We had discussed what process we wanted to pursue for being a little bit more proactive on crown land acquisition and a new process that would see the municipality undertake the regulatory work necessary to take existing crown land and further the process for it to be converted into privately held land. So this is this is not an acquisition process where we are looking to acquire the land as a municipality. That would follow the traditional acquisition process, but this is a way for us as a municipality to begin the process, undertake some of the regulatory work with some of the benefit on the back end when the land is sold. And what that does is it would encourage investment, or it would provide these crown lands as an investable piece of property to a private entity or to another entity without having to go through the full process of the regulatory work. Because most of the time that uncertainty and that amount of work for often 2 years is just too much for somebody to justify. So we have consulted with some other communities about this, and the consensus is that 2 years would be considered a very optimistic timeline. quite a few communities were in this for much longer than 2 years, so. We do not expect that this process will be quick. One of the things that we should keep in mind when we're selecting the parcels that we want to pursue is that this is a tremendous amount of work, often for, you know, at least 2 years. So if this is a major administrative commitment to go down this road, the other things to keep in mind when we're selecting the lands is that we should pursue lands that we know can be sold and we know that they're sellable. Oftentimes, talking to other communities going through this process, if the process takes too long and if we sit on it, the province often makes them go back and redo certain processes. They may have to redo engineering reports if they're more than a couple of years old. They may have to go back and redo Indigenous consultation if the process is taking too long. So oftentimes these communities are doing these processes numerous times, even before they acquire the land. So if we are to look at fast tracking this, we have to be fairly confident that we can flip these lands quickly, so we don't have to sit on it and continually update these plans and these consultations and the requirements from the province. The other thing to keep in mind is that when we're talking about the land, we should consider that the land should take into account sprawl and leapfrog developments. We do have a lot of crown land in town, but a lot of it is not a logical extension of what our servicing is and what our development would be. If we look to leapfrog developments, that the chances that we're going to be able to sell them quickly is extremely diminished, or if we are able to sell, the cost to develop it would be very difficult to do. So that I think that would encourage some to not do anything with the lands until the development catches up to where that parcel may be. So so we have identified a number of different lands that we think might be of some interest, and we added some context around them. We have recommended three different parcels. The first being 109 Pembina Ave. Big reason for recommending 109 Pembina Ave is we saw this as the lowest hanging fruit and a good pilot to at least get started. This is actually a titled piece of crown land. The rest are not titled. So a lot of this work should be done, and this should be a very simple acquisition process. I don't believe we're actually going to have to go through, we shouldn't have to go through surveying. I don't know if we'll have to do consultation. If we do, it would be very simplistic. There's no environmental considerations, and we could probably get this done within a matter of months, hopefully. So we expect very little on 109 Pembina Ave, and Jen, if you're able to possibly pull it up. So we just have it up there. This is really an infill development in the middle of existing residential parcels. They are larger residential parcels, but the servicing is already there. To be honest, we're not sure why, and the province isn't sure why that this one has remained crowned. But this one we believe will be fairly straightforward. The second one that we are recommending is 200 Hinton Road. And this one is, if you can go up, Jen, right along the highway. Correct, right there. So this one is, you could just zoom in a bit, please, Jim. So that large parcel is actually two different ones. 200 Eaton Road is the one that is actually the highway frontage. So this one is very central to town. It's a logical extension of all of our servicing. Water and sewer can be brought up there relatively easily. There is hydrants going throughout there. We would have to take a look at if those lines are sized appropriately. But we we believe servicing will be relatively easy. The logical extension of that service road could go into there. And we also believe that this is land that we could sell quickly just due to being highway frontage and valuable pieces of property. So this one is assessed at a little over $1 million with no known environmental considerations. The third one that we're recommending is what we're calling the tower site, which is just north of that same property, and we'd be looking at these lands in tandem. So we are recommending same piece of property, Jen, just ahead of it. Yeah, up on there. Yeah. So this one is slightly more challenging just because a lot of the land that you see there is could be difficult to develop just due to the sloping terrain. I do think that this is reflected in the assessed value. The assessed value of that is only about 455,000. The main area of developable land is where the current tower is sitting. So the tower and the owner of that tower does own those improvements, so we would have to look at some kind of agreement to relocate that. Other than that, the complications for this property would be power line right away, pipeline right of ways, but we don't believe that there's no known environmental considerations for this property. And it's serviceable with both access and water and sewer. So we have identified a number of others, but I don't know if I have to go through all of them in great detail, but if council would like to discuss any of the other properties that I identified, I'll happily answer any questions.
What's the big picture here? So we go through this, we spend our dollar, maybe a little bit extra. And then we get that, 109 Pembina Avenue, and then we put it up for sale immediately?
So through the chair to members of council, so going through this process, we're not actually taking control of the lands and we're not actually purchasing them. What we're committing to doing through this process is that we're going to do all of the regulatory work that is required on the front end to get them to a point where we could sell it. With an agreement from the provinces, we get to market these for sale. And when they do sell, we can split the proceeds of that sale 60-40 with the province, but we don't actually, but the proposal is that we don't actually purchase these lands and then resell them. We become in care and control of the lands and we market them and we sell them on the province's behalf.
Well, not quite. So we get it to this stage and then we put it up for sale and then, so we get to a certain stage, we would then take bids or put it up for sale in some way or form.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
Councilor Taylor, Councilor Ross, did you, or Councilor Reese, and Councilor Ross?
Thank you, sir. CAO, can you speak to the golf course lease allowance, please?
Sure. Is there anything specific that you'd like to know about
I'd
it?
pretty like your overview of everything you've spoken to.
Sure. The reason that we did not recommend the golf course lease lands is first, the existing cost of that is, I think I had it in here, but I believe it's just over $1,000 a year to have rights to those lands. So until we're ready with a plan on what we want to do with it, it's financially, we're much better off to continue to lease this land at about $1,000 a year. That's until we have a plan to do something else with it. And if we were to go through and we were interested in these lands, my recommendation is that we would follow just a traditional acquisition process, because if we're going to obtain those lands for our own purposes, then we want to own it. We don't want to go through this process where we're just becoming in care and control and then selling it unless we decide that's how we want to deal with the golf course. But right now, you know, this is something that we could keep. You know, I think it's wise to continue to take a look at those lands. Some of those lands are integrated into our West Area Structure Plan as future development. But as of right now, we don't have any plans for that, and until we've decided, made other decisions on the golf course, we're not recommending it at this time.
Thank you.
Councilor Reese, Councilor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have I guess a clarifying question, because 935 Greg Avenue, that 48.83 hectares out towards Highway 16 in the corner of Highway 40. I'm assuming because it's so far, the services would be difficult for that area and the cost would be a lot. Where you were saying a quick sell, that would probably take, you know, that area out of the priority. Is that the case?
Yeah, and there was a few other pretty major issues with that parcel when we looked at it. One of them is that there is no wetlands in that area, and that usually inflates the regulatory costs. But the other major one is access to that property on a permanent basis would be very difficult. The highway bypass right of way actually takes up the majority of the frontage on there, coming in from 16 and all the way around 40. That is actually all right of way for the bypass. So if we're looking at temporary development for that property, it would make some sense. But if we're looking at permanent development and somebody to privately make that work, you wouldn't be able to access that property without Alberta transportation permission, and likely without making major improvements to an intersection up near the bypass, which would be feasible for that property. The other reason was servicing would be extremely expensive to get to that area. The slope right around the golf course, it all goes downhill, so you would have to have a lot of municipal infrastructure and able to get your water and sewer to that area.
Yeah, I can go back into.
Yeah, but there's no one else.
Okay, then. So I guess I just have the question of the recommended places. I get the 5.73 hectares along Eaton Road there. I need a little more clarity on the 22.65 hectares, you know, with the difficult of the terrain and everything. So, you know, would that be like compared to all the other places? I'm just worried we go through the motions and then, you know, future developers look at that area and see so much difficulty in trying to develop that area. So is the terrain and all that, how conducive is it?
Sorry, through the chair, are you referring to the tower site?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah. For that area, you know, I think it's reflected in the price that not all of this land is fully developable.
Mhm.
You know, if it was fully developable, I would expect that the assessed value would be significantly larger. So I think it is reflected in that price. I think that there is a large area of developable land that is serviceable. But on the north side of the pipeline right of way, that there's a good likelihood that may not be developed. That might be pretty challenging to do. You'd have to look at crossing it. The other option we could do at some point is we could subdivide that off and keep that as green space and look to sell that, but that would be something that we would decide maybe a little bit further down the process.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor House. Anything further? Councilor House.
I'm gonna make the recommended action. The committee directs administration to bring the Crown land readiness briefing report to council with the following lands included: 109 Pivot Avenue, 200 Eaton Road in the northeast, 15-51-25-5. If I can speak to it, I totally 100% agree with the Pembina Avenue. It makes absolutely no sense why it is the way it is now, you know, and freeing up that land, you know, for a residential property is great. I think the Eaton Road, the 200, the highway corridor there, I think is good. I'm not totally sold on the other side of it yet, as CEO was mentioning, but I think it's worth taking a look at when you compare it to other places that we could look at that are even more difficult, so. Yeah, that's why, thank you.
Thanks, Ross. So committee, we do have a direction request. Are there any questions or comments? Councilor Grace?
Thank you. CAO, if we owe or if we incur any expense on any of these, is that taken off the top when we sell? And then we do the 60/40 split?
Through the chair to Councilor Race, no, as of right now, the way it's written is that we're agreeing to a 60/40 split. Under the assumption that our costs are not going to exceed 40% of 40% of that. The regulatory work. So I think that as we go through this, because the path on all of these lands is not entirely clear, especially because this is a new process. So I think that, you know, we're gonna have to be pretty cognizant of, as we're continuing to go down this path, we need to decide as whether it's worth it from a business standpoint to continue on with the next process. Because there's nothing saying that we have to take it all the way through and complete everything.
Yeah.
We could get it 80% of the way there, 70, but you know, there may be a logical stopping point for us as we continue to work through it. Because if the regulatory work and the cost of it is much more than we expect we're going to get on the back end of this deal, then it's probably not going to make sense for us to continue. But we're not going to know what that stopping point should be until we get into it. So, you know, I think we just need to be aware of that when we get into it, and you know, and touch base possibly every now and then.
Good, I think that's a big consideration. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilor Grace. Committee, anything further? Nothing else from committee, then we will call the question and request the committee direct administration to bring the Crown Land Readiness Briefing Report to council with the following lands included: 109 Pembina Avenue, 200 Eaton Road, and Northeast 145125. Council, if you could, or committee, if you could please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Is there anything further regarding the Crown Land discussion? And nothing, we will move on. Sorry, Councilor Race, go ahead.
Just one quick. When we're reading your budget of $2,000, budget of 25,000, that's what we are expecting to spend on this?
Through the chair at a very high level, yes, that was our expectations. Yeah.
So if we exceed that, you will come to us and let us know.
That's correct, and we will be looking for a budget adjustment once we have a little bit more clarity of the process. But as the first step, we wanted to get, we wanted council to agree to the lands that we wanted to pursue, but this is also contingent on getting the province to agree to the process.
Yes.
So, you know, if everything works out in our favor, our plan is that for the 2026 budget, we should have a much better idea. We should have agreement from the province to move forward with this process. And we should have a more detailed knowledge about what it's going to cost us, and we would be including that in the 2026 budget.
Thank you, thank you.
You, Councilor Race, Councilor Taylor, you had a question about
Just a minor point. Seems kind of odd that we included Mr. Lowen's biography in here. You know, talk about his children and all that sort of stuff. I'd rather talk about why this topic is related to the jurisdiction that he looks after. Just struck me as odd. But
Yeah,
take it with as you like.
yeah, and through the chair, typically we include that in briefing notes, just because this is for council's purpose and for council's information when we're meeting with ministers. So I've always include biographies just so you know who you're talking to, but we don't have to include it.
Okay. Thanks.
for the comment, Councilor Taylor. Nothing else from the committee. We will move on to 4.3. Hinton Healthcare Foundation and contact them. So,
Thank you, Chair. So we're bringing forward to committee a proposal to look at amending our contract with the Hinton Healthcare Foundation to reallocate some of the funding commitment that we've made to the foundation for the deficit funding of the clinic to go towards some physician recruitment. So we have specifically for a physician recruitment firm. So we are recommending council to agree to reallocate $125,000 of the total $1 million that we have committed. So this isn't new money, but it's just reallocating what we've already committed to. And this would be to hire a private recruitment firm, as well as the miscellaneous recruitment expenses that come along with that. That could be bringing the doctors in from elsewhere. That could be, assisting them with certain initiatives. I know a lot the recruitment firms typically help them with their licensing, and typically the organization who is recruiting that firm pays for those types of things. So that's what that additional $25,000 would be for. I view this as a good potential option with relatively low risk. So we talked with one firm just to get an idea of how the contracts for recruiters are structured in the medical field. And they're very similar across the board for other recruitment firms, where you would pay a $5,000 non-refundable retainer, and they use that $5,000 to fund the advertisements, to fund some of their time when it comes to talking with with physicians, etc. And then the remainder of the $20,000 would be paid when a new physician starts in our community. And that with a 1-year guarantee that if they leave, that they have an obligation to recruit another physician free of cost. So I see this as relatively low risk with the potential of some high reward. I did have a conversation with one company, and the one thing that I found interesting is they do focus a lot on international and specifically US, Australian, and UK markets, just because Canada pays more than all of those jurisdictions, and the licensing is very similar across. So it's very easy to license a US doctor into Canada or a UK doctor. So and they get that financial incentive to incentivize the physicians. So the other benefit is that if we are to bring in the doctors, we are looking at about a 4.5-month payback period on any one physician if they are going to come into the clinic and they are going to start paying the overhead. So it's a quick payback, and we only pay if we do obtain a physician. So what we're proposing is that we make this through an amendment of the contract with the Healthcare Foundation. It would be their responsibility to implement this. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer.
thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Who's used this private recruitment model? What communities have used it? What have been the results? And how would we use it to distinguish ourselves from those communities?
Through the chair, I'm not familiar with towns who have done it. They possibly have funded it, but typically it's the hospitals or the private clinics who are hiring these private recruitment firms. Companies often do. The recruitment firm that I spoke with, they have a contract with Walmart to attract their pharmacists, for example. So communities have. I'm aware of communities who have hired an employee to do this, to do it in-house. I'm not familiar with communities specifically who have hired recruitment firms.
Councillor Taylor, Councillor Haas.
Yeah. I think, well, no, I'm in favor of this. I mean, we're in a situation that's quite critical right now, with our clinic and the amount of doctors. I guess my only question really is cause there's this fine line between working in the clinic and working in the hospital. You know, the combination, you know, so I guess where I'm getting at is I don't wanna be recruiting for Alberta Health Services. I wanna make sure, what are we, how are we going to monitor to make sure that the recruiting dollars are going towards the clinic and only the clinic? I mean, if more happens just because they wanna work at the hospital too, great. But I just wanna make sure that that money is going towards our community, versus the hospital staff.
Through the chair to members of council, so how we envision doing that is that we would be involved and we would be assisting the healthcare foundation in the recruitment contract. And as a part of the contract, it would be a requirement that they would have to actually work in the clinic. Now, it's unlikely that somebody would work 100% of their time, just given rural practice, and they're often have a very flexible practice, but there would be a requirement that they would have to go and work in the clinic.
Okay, so if I may, so to follow up, and so it's the healthcare foundation will be responsible, however, the town administration will also be working with the healthcare foundation in the recruitment process.
Through the chair, I wouldn't say carrying out the recruitment process. What the commitment I made is that we would assist with the contract.
Okay.
So we would help structure the contract for the recruiter and just ensure that our interests are covered, and they would be, well, the healthcare foundation and the attraction and retention committee would be the ones sort of driving the process.
If I may follow up. When it comes down time, we do recruit a doctor. Who would then be responsible for that contract? Because my thoughts are is, you know, we don't want to contract that 20% of their time is in our clinic and 80% of the time is in. So who's responsible for drawing up the contract with doctors for how much time is in the clinic versus anywhere else? Is that the healthcare foundation, or is that a combination? How does that work?
Through the chair, no, that would be likely between the clinic itself and the hospital.
Okay.
But for our payment to the recruiter, there's a condition that they have to work so many hours within the clinic.
Okay.
So, but it wouldn't be the healthcare foundation entering into contracts with physicians directly. They're just more or less a recruitment arm and then assisting the clinic in that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And myself, and Councilor Reese, and my question is very similar to Councilor Hollis's, so I'll just make it a follow-up. So understanding that the interest lies in getting doctors to become clinic partners. That's not specifically spelled out in the proposed amendment, though. Would it be beneficial to have something in the amendment that states that? I don't know what the wording would be, that they have to be clinic partners, because basically it just says, engagement of physician recruitment for general recruitment and and 25,000 extra for general recruitment and attraction initiatives.
Yeah, through the chair, we could certainly put it into the contract with the healthcare foundation as well. I think that's appropriate.
For myself, I think that is a necessity if we're putting, diverting taxpayer dollars for the purpose of attracting physicians to come, and the intent is that it's paid back by them contributing through the clinic fees, that it's important that they're actually going to be working at the clinic and, our clinic partners and helping to cover some of that clinic overhead, take that off the town's plate. Councilor Reese?
Thank you, sir. I know there's no motion made, but right now I would support that 125,000 coming from the, a lot of money to the healthcare foundation. However, I would like council to receive a presentation from any potential recruiting firm to hear what their successes are. I want them, even if it's a Zoom session, for them to call in so we are able to ask questions And we're confident with that $100,000 we're gonna spend. So,
Thank you, Councilor Reese, Councilor Ross.
Kind of two questions. First off, to build off just real quick of Councilor Stashik's recommendation, which I hope solely agree. Does administration need any consensus on that, or I see you writing profusely to add it to it, but is that all that's required, is just adding it and bringing it forward at a later date?
Yeah, through the chair, if we want to make a motion for this contract amendment to go forward to regular council with additional, or with an amendment that would include, a requirement for any physician to work within the Hinton Medical Clinic. We could certainly do that, because this will have to go to regular council as well.
Right. So at this time, I'm not, I don't wanna move forward quite yet on the record to the regular meeting, but I do wanna add that it's added in the draft. Whatever that wording is, if you can help Ms. Davy Campbell add that, but I'd like to make that, get that consensus.
So, Councilor House, you want to make a consensus?
Yes, I wanna make the consensus request to add whatever that wording is that, CEO Panasic mentioned.
Through the chair and to Miss Davy Campbell is that committee reached consensus to amend the agreement to include a condition that any physician work within the Hinton Medical Clinic.
Any physician,
Some of their time.
Yes.
Not all of it.
or any physician,
To include. Yes, yeah, including, or, sorry. That recruited physicians, Jen, it is better wording. Work within the Hinton Medical Clinic. Possibly for part of their practice. And we can work on the wording a little bit, just tighten it up before we bring it forward to regular council.
Okay.
But if that meets the intent, council.
that meets my intent, yeah, because I wanna make sure that's captured in that agreement, so, thank you.
So administration has an understanding of the intent. And admin and Councilor House are content with that wording?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have consensus request. I have Councilor Taylor and Councilor Reese.
mine does not speak to the high committee.
Mine does.
Yep.
I'm glad that you put at least part of their time, because I don't think we're in a point here in the recruitment of doctors where we can get too dictatorial about what they can do and when they come here. We get a single parent that wants to come here and spend their time doing this and, work from noon till, 4 in the afternoon or something like that. We better be welcoming everybody with open arms, not start giving a bunch of dictates as to where you can work and how much you have to work. That's not gonna serve our aim at all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. And again, thank you, Councilor Reese, for stepping out of the queue. I just want to remind committee that we do have a consensus request for the amendment. And Councilor Magoon, welcome. Councilor Haas, you want to speak to the amendment?
Yeah, and I don't disagree, I don't wanna, alienate anyone, however. I also want us to be mindful that these are taxpayers' dollars going towards a community service that, we're funding, whereas the healthcare center is funded by Alberta Health Services, so I just wanna make sure that, those recruitment dollars are going towards, what it's intended for, which is the majority of the time, or most of their time at the clinic, so. That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Haas. Committee, anything further on the proposed amendment? Okay, so nothing, we'll call to question the amendment. The committee seek consensus to amend the agreement to include any recruited physicians work within the Hinton Medical Clinic for part of their practice. Maybe if you could please vote now.
Mr. Chair, it's not showing up on my computer. I'm in favor.
Well, that is carried unanimously then. When I misspoke, that wasn't an amendment, that was a direction request. Okay. So if there's nothing further regarding the amendment.
I'll go back to the queue, please.
Okay. Councilor Race,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to circle back and get council's thoughts on us receiving a presentation from a recruiting organization. You know, so we have the opportunity to ask questions.
Councilor Race, so that's a direct question to committee. Any members have any
And
thoughts?
That's why I'm in the queue.
Okay, Councilor House, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess my question to administration is what is the procedure in regards to, hiring a recruiting firm? The reason I ask that is because Councilor's raised question would be, it would be unusual for us to get involved as a council. Because I see that more as an administrative exercise to work with the healthcare foundation to find the recruiter. There would be notices put out in the community to find that recruiter, and that would be more administratively, but if I'm, you know, I guess what's the process gonna look like?
Through the chair, so the procurement process will have to follow the procurement process for the Hinton Healthcare Foundation, so I'm not sure what their policies are on that. But my understanding of the request wasn't to look at selecting the recruiter, but just bringing recruiters in to do presentations about the benefit they can provide and answer questions that council may have of them. Is that correct?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, if I may follow up, I'm not sure yet how I feel about that, cause I think that would muddy the waters a bit, and, you know, I guess if we're gonna give the healthcare foundation the money to do so and go forward, I'm not entirely sure if we as a council need to get involved at that level, so, you know, I'll wait to hear from other councilors or their thoughts on it, but yeah, I'm not sure, you know, as long as I think the retention committee is also included in that. You know, there's representation from council on that as well, so thank you, that's all I have.
Thank you, Councilor House, Mayor Nissen, and then Councilor Race.
Thank you, and through the chair to committee, to answer Councillor Race's question was sort of directed at myself. I spoke with a recruiting firm. This idea that I brought forward came about ultimately because I was reached out to by a professional medical recruiter who has a tie to our community through family, who saw us on the news and thought, hey, we could help. Through that process and talking to them, I was convinced that the medical recruiting is just like recruiting a CAO or any of the other professionals that we're looking at. These recruiting firms exist and they have a record of success around the world, depending on the firms. It is my belief that our council should absolutely do this amendment to allow the Healthcare Foundation to hire a recruiter. But at the same time, I don't believe that council should be involved in the process of choosing that recruiter in any way. I know for a fact that recruiters exist, and I'm more than happy to allow the Healthcare Foundation to find a reputable recruiter that they choose to use through their procurement practices and not be directly involved in that process. It's ultimately, in my mind, why we chose to fund the Healthcare Foundation to support the medical clinic rather than doing it directly through administration. That being said, Councillor Race, should council not be interested in speaking to a recruiter? And if you are interested in hearing about the process, I'm sure I can connect you with the folks that reached out to me. Thank you.
Councilor Race.
Thank you, sir. I don't think once I said, I wanna be party to recruiting or choosing who we're gonna pick. I don't know how many times we've had people come and do a presentation to us to give us more information. But Mr. Mayor, I certainly will reach out to you because we're gonna be spending $125,000. And should I be asked by anybody in town The process, I do wanna have some answers. So, I certainly will be talking to them.
Thank you, Councilor Reese. Councilor Taylor.
Is the direction you're expecting that we go with recommended action? No? Is that the one? Cause I'd be happy to put that forward.
Yes, we can probably just scratch as presented now and just for it to go forward. to
I'd
council,
like to
because
put
we
the
do have we have the other direction, but yes.
That the committee refer the healthcare foundation contract amendment to a regular council. To a regular meeting of council. I'd like to put that forward. I think this is a good idea. I think we've spoken to it lots. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. So we have the consensus request now. Anyone like to speak to it? Any additional comments, questions, Councilor?
Just real quick, I'll be in favor of this. I think that, we are at a critical situation that requires some more boots on the ground. And if, we've got recruiting firms out there, there's a reason for it. We're not the only community that are suffering from a lack of physicians. So I think this is the perfect time to be doing it. And I do appreciate, the fact that, recruiters are going also international to other countries, potentially, especially targeting the ones that are similarly licensed. Cause we don't wanna, necessarily have people coming that's gonna take a long period of time to get their license. So, being able to target those countries, I think are a really important part of the recruitment. And the fact that the United States also too is, we might get a flood of them from there too, from what's going on over there. So I think this is a great time. Thank you.
Councilor Ross. Councilor Taylor.
The other thing is, if I've heard the town manager correctly, we won't burn through $125,000 to find out whether this is successful or not. We might spend $5,000 up front on a couple of hires, and then we'll find out whether it's successful. So it's not gonna cost us anywhere near that to find out whether this works or not works.
Through the chair to members of council. I think if we were to spend all 125,000, then this has been an incredibly successful initiative, and I think that's a really good thing. But we know that each contract really is only a $5,000 risk with and the rest is on the tail end of it. So I think there's the way the contracts are structured, I think there's very little risk to financially.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Committee? Nothing further, we will call the question. That committee referred the Hinton Healthcare Foundation contract amendment to a regular meeting of council as amended. Please vote no. And that is carried unanimously. Is there anything further regarding the Hinton Healthcare Foundation contract amendment? Nothing, we will move on to council reporting. Nope, yeah, oh, I'm sorry, I missed the addition. Is that what you're going to let me know?
Yep.
Yes, item 4.4, I don't have the wording in front of me. But we are report from administration, item 4.4.
Thank you, Chair, and I will turn this over to Ms. Wade.
Thank you, CAO, through to committee. Bit of an update following last week's council meeting regarding our grant application and the correspondence received from Minister Bowen. We applied for, I believe this is a correction to last week's meeting, 3.9 million and did receive a partial approval of 550,000. In the letter from FRIA, we were given a bit of feedback and asked to resubmit for phases 2 and 3. So the door is not completely closed there. So work will begin, or I suppose finish on the RFP here shortly to complete phase 1, which is the mulching of the existing fire guard. So that work will get done, but kind of expanding on that project that has not been approved to date. So we're back to the drawing board and hoping to resubmit to FRIA in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor.
Can you point to me where the fire guard is on that map, please? Which fire guard are we talking about?
Right along here just on the south side of the highway bypass. With the new pipeline that's gone in here, what we've looked at doing is you can kind of see it here, but it's basically everything in between to make one big, large fire guard on the south side of town.
And Councilor Taylor?
Well, except aren't the fires gonna be coming from the west?
So because Hinton is essentially a very long rectangle and this kind of comes around the community, there's actually relatively. We do have some future plans for in here, but this is to kind of come around the community because it comes all the way to right around Highway 40 and the highway bypass is actually right in around here. So we do have from 16 to the river that we have to look at it in future phases, but it does come all the way around here and all the way to Highway 16 on the other side.
Maybe? Nope, you're missing.
Thank you. And through the chair to administration, Ms. Way, you mentioned that FRIA approved phase 1 and gave us feedback that we should apply again for phase 2 and 3. Now, from where I'm sitting virtually here, I missed if that phase 1, 2, and 3 is our phase 1, 2, and 3 or FRIA's phase 1, 2, and 3 for the granting. Can you clarify that for me?
Absolutely, through the chair to Mayor Nissen, our phase 1, 2, and 3, those were how we structured our grant application. So we were approved for just the mulching and can't move forward with the rest at this point. So we're gonna do a little bit of work on that.
Okay, thank you. And can you clarify in our applications, what were the phase 1, 2, and 3 requests?
So as I mentioned, phase 1 is the mulching of the existing fire guard. Phase 2 is the removal of the some of the, I think it was the deciduous that we want to get rid of, along where CAO had just mentioned, essentially extending our fire guard on the south side of town back up to Highway 16 on the east of town. And then the third piece of that, I'm not sure that I would call it a third phase, is working with industry partners to remove usable timbers from those areas and then reusing those funds to further the fire guard in terms of distance.
Okay, and Ms. Way, could you, when you say mulching of the existing fire guard, is that the cleared highway right-of-way bypass effectively that exists currently? Or is it the pipeline right-of-way that's below that in the map?
It's the north side. Is that right, Jordan? Is that what he's asking? For phase 1, is it along the pipeline or north of the bypass?
Just north of the, south of the bypass, north of the pipeline.
Yeah.
And does that existing mulching fire guard run the full length of the town, or is it only partial?
Partial at this time.
Okay, so if I were to understand correctly, then phase 2 would be the step where we're increasing the fire guard to cover the full length of the southern portion of town and getting the full width. And then phase 3 is just further expanding the width through the harvesting of merchantable timber. Is that accurate as to what we've requested?
Ultimately, 2 and 3, I think, would happen simultaneously. The feedback we received from FRIA essentially was to do the work to better understand the cost analysis of the merchantable timber. So we've made some connections at this point, and we have meetings upcoming.
Okay, thank you very much. That's very clear from my perspective now on what's going on with the south side of town. Now, have we heard back about our applications for the fire guard on the east side of town down by Mary Reimer?
Through the chair, that fire guard was incorporated into expanding it with the merchantable timber. If we had enough funding to look at the east side near Mary Reimer, that was something that we were hoping to do with some additional funding, but but it wasn't specifically in the application for this area. It was an extension.
Okay, thank you, CEO Panasic. So in responding to Minister Lowen's letter about the expanded projects, it sounds to me like the town administration has actually taken a number of proactive steps to do that. And from what I'm hearing here, it sounds like we've put in a free application and then we further expanded the project and added on to it. I'm curious if maybe CEO Panasic or someone else from administration has any thoughts on how we can inform the ministry of what it is that we're doing on these big ambitious fire guards, and seek any assistance from the ministry to help us get through these freer processes in a bit more of an efficient path. Because for us to go bold and then get phase one at a quarter of what we've requested, we obviously need some help with these applications, and I think we should find a way to communicate that with the ministry. So any suggestions for actions council can take to advocate for ourselves here, CEO Panasic?
Through the chair, my recommendation at this point would possibly be just for committee to provide some direction to approach Minister Lowen to have a discussion about our initiative, because we also have Alberta Transportation involved in this fire guard initiative as well, for the actual highway bypass as well. I'm not sure if we have any firm commitments from the ministry at this point on that, and we have been working with them for quite a while. And I know initially we had submitted that to the province, and they committed to doing it. And then the province relayed to us that they only had $50,000 to do it, which when you're looking at a fire guard initiative is just about useless. So we've been working with them for quite a while to get them to do a little bit more on that area. And I think we're moving in that direction, but I think that having a meeting with Minister Lowen to pull in their work and their responsibility on the highway bypass and piggybacking that on with our fire guard initiative, I think that would be good to communicate to the minister so he has an idea of the full picture. Because there are numerous ministries involved. Like I said, the bypass is actually has been sent to Alberta Transportation to be implemented. So, I think that would be wise to communicate to Minister Lowen.
Thank you, CEO Panasic. And that's actually another addition to, not only do we get the approval for the mulching of our fire guard that's just south of the highway bypass as described by CEO Panasic, but we are still working with transportation on clearing of that highway bypass. And that is still the active process. It's been ongoing for quite some time at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to make the CAO's recommended consensus request, but if I could get the CAO to work with Ms. Davy Campbell to word that direction request for a conversation with the minister, I would appreciate that, and then I will make that direction from here.
Thank you. Jen, maybe that committee reach consensus to approach Minister Lowen in regard to the free Fire Smart application. Is that sufficient, Mr. Mayor?
I'm seeing some head shakes from council. Council, any suggestions on the wording for the direction here?
I think that's too specific. I mean, you can mention that as something that you want to talk about. But I think there's lots of things the provincial government could be doing that we could talk to them about as well, other than that specific thing. I mean, they should be working with West Fraser on that side of town with their logging plants, get their logging plants as fire smart as possible. So we want the whole picture here. We just don't want to talk about a tiny part of the picture. I mean, they have to step up and do their job as well. We're not just talking about us doing our little part of the job. We're only successful if everybody works on the big picture. So I'd like the wording to reflect reach consensus to approach Mr. Lowen to talk about our plan, how to make it better. And you can put in particular this aspect as well. He said your plan needs to be better or bigger or bolder. Okay, well, step up and help us.
So through the chair to talk to Minister Lowen about the town of Hinton or wildfire mitigation plans. Does that encompass everything?
I think so.
Yeah.
And the province is right.
Through the mayor, does that work for you?
That would work for me, yes.
So the question I would have is, who's doing that? Are we directing administration to do that? Are we
Yeah,
directing
yes.
her to do that? Who's doing that?
The recommendation from my perspective was direct administration. The mayor will be along for the ride the whole way. But we want our administration working with the ministry office and the ADMs on this file, absolutely. So
Well,
direct administration is my intent.
You'd like to add that then? You'd like to add that, Mayor Nissen, to direct administration?
Yes, please.
Councillor Magoon, did you want to speak to this?
No, I'll wait for the main, back into the main queue, please, Mr. Chair.
Yes, no problem, thank you. Councillor Taylor?
I'm good with that, but I wonder if it makes it more powerful to say approach Minister Lowen to talk about the town of Hinton wildfire mitigation plans and the province's role in those plans. Because they have a role in these plans. They can't just sit back and write a letter and say you need to do better. They have to step up and do what they have to do too.
Yes, I'd ask Councillor Taylor, is that to Mayor Nissen? Requesting him to change his.
Yeah, would you see that as something you could support?
I have no problem adding the province's role. In my opinion, it's implied here. We're advocating for the province to come and help us with the improvement and implementation of our fire guarding plans, which is what they've, through correspondence, told us they would like us to do. But if Councillor Taylor would like to propose that friendly amendment to the consensus, I would agree to it.
Yeah, I think that's good now, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Okay, committee. You have a consensus request that we've collectively brought to the table. Mayor Nissen, you're good with that? You're muted.
Thank you. It just got pushed to vote. I'm just reading it now. Yes, I'm good with that. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe any other comments, questions, you would like to speak to it? Seeing nothing, then we will call the question with committee direct administration to approach Mr. Mullen to talk about the town of Hinton wildfire mitigation plans and the province's role in this plan. Maybe if you could please vote no. And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you for that. Mayor Nissen, back to the main queue, I have Councillor Haas, Councillor Magoon, and Councillor Taylor.
You can take it. Thank you.
Councillor Magoon?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, actually, this is well timed after the last consensus request from the mayor. So I'm gonna quote the Jasper Fitzhugh from approximately, it was February 5th. They had said because the town had a meeting with its FRIA representatives this week where they could get more information, council decided not to send a reply letter to Lowen. That's actually not what was decided at regular council last week. you know, information was accepted, but that doesn't imply a direction one way or the other. So I guess for administration, my question is now, already in speaking to members of the public, this is on social media, this article from the Fitzhugh saying that council decided not to respond. So now we're fighting misinformation in the public sphere. Is it reasonable? And if it needs to be by way of direction, I guess we can do it. What is the communications campaign going to look like to get information about the granting? What administration's next steps are around continued grant writing process, working with the province to get that support, and now this interface with Minister Lowen going to look like? Because we're on the hind foot because, and it's just my personal opinion, I think that the communication from the Fitzhugh could have been a little bit more clear.
Chair to members of the committee. So first step, and based on council's direction, we'll be approaching Minister Lowen, and it will be in regards to that letter. As a part of that letter, you know, it was a request to communities to provide big and bold fire smart applications that are, you know, couple 100 meters wide. We provided exactly that and more. And, you know, because the province decided that they weren't going to fund it, you know, I think we have a conversation with Minister Lowen about that. And I think that, you know, we're going to advocate based on the direction council provided. We're going to advocate for our further phases of our fire break and the further work that should be done. We're also going to advocate for the province to do what they have already committed to do, which is close to 2 years ago, which is their work on the highway bypass. So it's all together in one big project there, but also talking about things a little bit more broadly, as Councillor Taylor brought up, of, you know, looking at an overall strategy for Hinton when it comes to fire protection for the community. So I think that we will respond, you know, through directly with Minister Lowen to that letter.
But sorry, if I can clarify, Mr. Chair, I think my concern is also to the public. The public, and I've had several conversations already where they think that the town is done with the issue, and that they're not aware of all the things that administration has filled council in on. And honestly, it's one of those things where I feel like we'd be really well suited to have communications say, nope, this is where we're at. These are the things administration's doing in terms of granting. These are the things council's working on in terms of communications with Minister Lowen's office. These are the further FRIA applications that are going to be made. Because again, we're fighting misconception because the average person on the street doesn't understand the difference between accepted for information and, I want to quote it properly, decided not to send, because that's not what council did.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I don't know if you wanted a direction request or a response
Well,
at some time.
I could perform, like, I could make a direction, but I guess my question to administration is that something that was within the purview of communications and that they're planning on doing, or would you like a direction from council?
Through the chair to members of committee, my recommendation for council, if we want to address this publicly, I would address it through a response of Minister Lowen's letter. So if committee wants to direct administration to draft a response, you know, that would ultimately be signed by the mayor. You know, if we would like to do that, we could send that out, which would be public, and we do post those publicly. And through a response, we can outline exactly what we have proposed and what we're asking for. I think we'll provide some more well-rounded context on this issue.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for going on at length here. I think my request, maybe I'm not being clear. I'm more concerned with the public engagement piece locally, letting our citizenry know what we're doing currently as a town.
but through the chair, we can speak to, or Ms. Wade can speak to that.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the floor to Ms. Wade, Councilor Magoon, but my suggestion would be is if that's something you wanna see, maybe think about a direction. Ms. Wade?
Thank you, Chair, through to Councilor Magoon and the rest of committee. So those meetings in terms of what the town, has already prepared in terms of readiness, wildfire and other hazard disasters, we're actually creating a portal on the website currently, as a project page, so that everyone will be able to go there, access resources, see where we're at with our grants, also gain information, around the fire guard project, all the different aspects. Specific to the FRIA project, it had been my intent to meet actually with the folks over at Fire tomorrow, connect with our admin folks at FRIA to get more direct feedback from them. And then, of course, as is typical within community services, to be sharing that as part of a public communication, both to celebrate the 550,000 that we did receive and what we intend to do with that, but also to let the community know what is forthcoming. So all of emergency management is already loaded and on deck. We're just waiting for communications to do some finalization to that portal. And then with respect to the FRIA piece, I had hoped within the next week and a half to get something out publicly based on the feedback that I'll receive from our admin person at FRIA.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd be prepared to make a direction.
Okay, we'll just give Ms. Davy Campbell a second. Good.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead, whenever you're ready.
Thanks. To committee seek consensus to direct administration to engage in a social media information bulletin that informs the community about the current status of wildfire prevention measures, including FRIA grant applications, current grant funding, and any other appropriate related information. I was shooting from the hip, so I hope that wasn't too fast.
Got most of it, just at the end, current grant funding and any other appropriate initiatives.
Appropriate.
Is that what-
Yeah, initiatives works. Just and I guess if I could speak to it then, Mr. Chair, just to cover off the bases of what I'm looking for.
Can-
Yeah,
can
just
you see it, Councilor Magoon?
No, I can't.
Is that possible to share it so that you can see? Okay. Ms. Davy Campbell's just gonna share it so you can see it. Make sure that's, what your intention is, and then if you wanted to speak to it, that's fine.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you see it on your screen there, Councilor Magoon?
No,
No,
sir.
it didn't show this voting question.
No.
I think we did. Yep.
Oh, hold on a sec. Yep, there it is.
Okay,
Okay, that committee seek consensus to direct administration. Just social media, not median, information bulletin that informs the community about the current status of wildfire prevention measures, including current grant funding and any other appropriate initiatives. Yeah, absolutely. If I could speak to that, Mr. Chair?
go ahead.
Yeah, great. Yeah, it's unfortunate because again, the general public who may not be as well informed, I think they definitively don't understand the difference between accept for information and decided not to send a reply letter. And apparently, and I don't know if it's true, but I saw somebody online reference that it had also made its way through CTV, but I saw that today and I haven't been able to confirm yet. So this is just one of those measures where we want to make sure that the public has the right information. And honestly, the town's been working quite hard at wildfire prevention. So I think it's one of those things to celebrate. So we get the right information out there, make sure it's public, go to where the people are at social media, make sure that they're sharing the right information, and just, get rid of misinformation as soon as we can. And honestly, at the end of the day, I don't think it'll take a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon and Councillor Haas, and then myself.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Magoon. I'm in favor of this. I think that, quite honestly, the Fitzhugh made an assumption. Because in fact, we didn't even have the information that we had this evening. We had no reason to believe that we needed to respond to that letter. Because at one, it was not directed to Hinton. It was a generic letter. And we had not heard on what our ask and what we are given. And now that we have received that information, we have now moved forward with now what we want to do by going to Mr. Loan and finding out. So I think the Fitzhugh, I agree, made a lead to an assumption that we didn't want to do anything. There was nothing to do until we heard, and if now we know, we can follow up with that. So I think overall, I'm in favor of this. The more information that we can get out there from our perspective and not from others, and what we're doing is essential. That's going to assist in helping our citizens feel protected. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haas. For myself, I'm in support of it as well. And I would have been in support of it even without the concern about the report from the Fitzhugh. I think since the Jasper fire last summer, this is probably the thing that I've been asked about most as a councillor, is what is Hinton doing to prevent this same thing from happening in our community. And so I think a social media piece that kind of outlines everything that we're doing comprehensively in one place that's passively available, like that's how social media feeds information, I think is beneficial. I think it's also great to hear that administration is creating a website portal where people can go to for additional information, comprehensive information. So anybody who's actively seeking out can find that. But I think the passive communication to say, yeah, no, we're not doing nothing. We are doing, in fact, a lot of things, and here's what we're doing. I think that's going to be a great benefit to better informing the citizens in the community that we are taking this seriously. So let's thank you, Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. To administration, how far away are you from having that project paid yet?
Thank you, Councillor Race. As I mentioned, I would say 10 days, pending no catastrophes in the communication department between now and then.
Thank you.
Councillor Race, committee, would you have a direction request? Okay, see nothing else from committee, we will call to question. The committee probably shouldn't seek, it should probably be fine. In the direction, it probably shouldn't say the committee seek consensus. It should just be the committee direct administration.
Yeah, we could somewhat redundant, so we can make that
That's
as a housekeeping, yeah.
The committee seek consensus to direct administration to engage in a social media information bulletin that informs the community about the current status of wildfire prevention measures, including pre-grant application, current grant funding, and any other appropriate initiatives. So remind, it's asking for Uber. Yeah. Okay, committee, if you could please vote now. And that is carried unanimously. Great. Thank you, Councilor Magoo.
Thanks.
Are there any additional action required in this matter?
Through the chair, not to my knowledge. No, I think we covered it.
No additional direction required. Committees or anything further on the wildfire prevention? Councilor Taylor?
Where do we sit on the fire smart plans? Like we put a tender out for a fire smart plan, was that a competitive bid? And what's the status of that?
For the planning component or the fire smart?
Through the chair, so. For Fire Smart Plan, we are nearly complete our last one, but that plan is now coming due, so we do have. I believe it was, we were successful in the Fire Smart grant to renew that for about another 200. 200,000 to renew that 10-year plan. Whether it was competitive, it was within the procurement processes dictated by the grant, which is they have to apply to Fire Smart. So we have a pool of contractors that you can pick from that have been pre-vetted by Fire Smart.
So that's where they're at right now, is applying, we've got the money and they've got to apply to get the contract. So we just.
That's correct. I believe we have a contractor on board through FRIA. We have the funding. I'm not sure if the funding has been sent yet, but we have commitments that has been approved.
And that plan is due to be complete when?
Completion of the 10-year plan.
We have a number of timelines. Off the top of my head, I feel like it's June, but I would have to go back to our document and revisit that.
So what we've done so far in the way of fire smart planning is based on a very old plan. And in June, it'll probably be updated a bit, this new work that we're doing. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Councilor Race?
Thank you, sir. To administration, are we gonna be having another session where we meet with people from the community who have equipment that we could utilize and they want that equipment on the list? And also, where are we at with the volunteer list, people who want to assist if we have, who take in people from other communities? So, but if we could start with the equipment list.
Thank you again, Councilor Rice, through the remainder of committee. So those types of instances where the community can come and join us, both to, for volunteers or equipment or what have you, all of those things will be available through the portal. There's a timeline letting everybody know as we approach summertime, what will be available. In terms of the volunteer, we've actually added a position within our ECC to accommodate that. We noticed a great outpouring from our community during Yellowhead's evacuation here. So that's something that we've sort of added in to be able to accommodate and do in a more streamlined process going forward.
Thank you.
Councilor Race? Anything further before we move on? Seeing nothing else, now we can move on to council reporting. Let's start on screen. How about that? Councilor Magoo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, nothing to report.
Councilor Magoo, Mayor Nisson?
Thank you, and through the chair to committee, I have been attending the Tourism Industry Association of Alberta conference this week. Ultimately, I heard a lot from Tourism Alberta about their tourism development zones. Now we're in the Northern Rockies zone, and it's through this Tourism Development Zones initiative that we got our DMO, I think, all set up. There was a talk today from the Minister of Sport and Tourism, Minister Show. He spoke a lot about the tourism development zone development, but also the aggressive timeline that this government has set for tourism development in Alberta. So as it stands today, the goal of the government of Alberta is to double tourism spend by the end of the decade. It's a very ambitious plan, and they're doing that through, in part, an all-season resort initiative. Now, in my conversations about that, I was immediately interested about that county parcel just east of the Jasper Gates, and I found no updates. So there's no new information to share about that just yet. But the province is looking to do a very aggressive tourism strategy, and some of that's going to happen in our TDZ. That is all I have to report today. Thank you very much, Chair.
Just a little unclear, because the last time I listened to the province give a presentation on that, they had this strategy, but they didn't have any tactics as to how they were gonna accomplish the strategy. Do you feel that they have any better idea on how they're gonna accomplish this strategy?
So, thank you, Councillor Taylor. That's a good question. I would agree with that assessment in some of my past discussions with them as well. But one of the new developments that I found at this conference was Tourism Alberta has now hired a full-time person into the position managing the all-season resort initiatives, and their job is ultimately taking existing assets and turning them into all-season resorts, so 3 or 2-season places today, but also bringing investment into the province for the creation of these new resorts. So as I see it, yes, they are staffing and they are moving forward very aggressively in this direction. And a lot of the presentations this week have been about just how Tourism Alberta is going to meet the aggressive timelines set forth by the government. So yeah, I see this week has been all about action.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing quickly to report this, Thursday. Like every year, there's an emerging trends in municipal law. The Calgary one happened last week, but this one is in Edmonton. I'm gonna be attending that virtually. I find them very informative, and it helps to understand some of the issues legally that other municipalities have experienced, and being able to share that knowledge with the rest and help protect our community from those matters. So I'll be attending that on Thursday virtually. So thank you.
Councillor House, Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. Last week I attended a community futures Zoom meeting and it was business as usual. I have also been busy with the attraction and retention committee. We've taken on tasks that we have to get done. So that's quite exciting, and that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Race. Councillor Taylor.
Nothing to report, my one committee didn't meet.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, and for myself, I have nothing to report either. My 2 committees. So that takes us to item 5.2, Chief Administrative Officer reporting and status report.
Thank you, Chair. I do have my January operating highlight report for your information. A few other items. We already spoke about the one that I had flagged, but we did receive the $550,000 for firefighting of the community. They also, the federal government has also come out with an announcement recently that we were successful on a regional transit system between Hinton and Jasper, and that's in part for the Jasper recovery. So a regional bus between Hinton and Jasper for that was in the amount of $2 million. So we will be participating with Jasper on that to kind of finalize some of the details of how that's going to look and how that integrates within our current transit system, and be working with Jasper on that initiative. That's everything, unless there's any other questions on the report.
Councillor House, yourself, and Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions, if you don't mind, but I think the first one is, heard a lot about the hot tub and the spinner, the swimsuit spinner lately, so on social media. So I just was curious on, because it sounds like this swimsuit spinner has been an issue, broken down, broken, not available most of the time. So is this something that is not working majority of the time, that is is that true? And the other is, what is the status of the hot tub at this time?
I can tackle the spinner. So those spinners, they've been around for many years. It is typical. They break down, they hang on walls, kids push on them. The components are tricky to get, and then of course taking time to replace them. So they do break quite frequently. Right now, we only have one in each changer. So unfortunately, we will have to take the time it takes to repair them if we're gonna keep that asset in the room.
And on the hot tub, we were still waiting for the part. In fact, when they were writing the report, I asked about it because I wanted to include something. And they didn't have an update at that time because they haven't heard anything about the part coming in yet. So I think they were at about 5 weeks out of a 6-week timeline they were told. So
And if I may, is this a part that is commonly broken down? Is this something that it just happened or, you know, I mean, I know it's an old system,
So-
right? But
it was an impeller in an existing pump that failed, but they're replacing the whole pump. It's about a $5,000 pump that is on order and that's what they're waiting on.
okay. One more, just follow up on these two and then we'll go back with you. Yeah, so this spinner thing, is it worth the time to even have it in there? If it's that vulnerable to vandalism or vulnerable to breaking down, is it even an asset that's required or needed? If it's most of the time, if it's not functionable and we have to order parts and take the time to do it, so is it administration's recommendation to keep it or get rid of it? Like, I don't know, like,
Thank you for the question, Councillor Haas, through to the remainder of committee. I haven't assessed the numbers, so I don't know what the part cost that, you know, and how frequently exactly we're replacing it, or whether it's just other time demands, and that's clearly a low priority. So I mean, I could look into it. It is a nice to have, especially with how cold it can get outside, having a frozen bathing suit, you carry it out to the car, not ideal. You know, in the summer months when we have a swim club or even JLC, it is again a nice to have. Is it a requirement? No, not at all.
all right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ross. So I have myself, Councillor Taylor, Mayor Nissen, Councillor Ross, and Councillor Mason Hughes. For myself, I just had a question about the grant award, and that's great news. $2.5 million is a pretty big deal. So how does that get communicated to the public that we were awarded these pretty substantial grants and what they're gonna be used for and how they're gonna benefit our community?
Through the chair and the rest of the committee. So Fire Smart, I believe, was awarded yesterday or possibly the day before. So and you know, up until hours ago, we actually weren't allowed to release that, but we obtained specific permission through FRIA so that we could speak to it a little bit more freely at this meeting. But so we haven't done it yet, but we will put out something once we have a little bit more details. We don't, you know, we will be putting out some details on the transit as well. We don't have a lot of details on the transit as of right now, other than it's an operational grant and we have to work out the details of exactly how that's going to work and what the route is going to be, how often it's going to be available. So we wanted to have a little bit more information, but we will be putting that out on our platforms.
Okay. So do those typically go out then like through Civic Send and our social media?
Yes, I believe so.
Good. Look forward to seeing those. That's it for me, Councillor Taylor.
How do we sit on the snow removal budget? We on track or below, saving a ton of money that it don't reduce taxes or where?
To the chair, to all the committee, I would say that, you know, although we haven't had a lot of snowfall, most of our snow removal budget is actually sanding and salting, and we've actually done lots of that. So I think we're at sort of a typical year for sand and salt. I don't think we're going to run out with the pile that we put up, but we're going through it.
Thank you.
Councillor Taylor, Mayor Hinton.
Thank you. And through the chair, probably to Miss Way, I was wondering if you could give a quick update on the Beaver Boardwalk rehabilitation work.
Love to. Thank you for asking, Councillor Nissen. Mayor Nissen, apologies. Through to the remainder of the committee. So as you can see in the map, we have a lot of sections that have been decommissioned. And right now, we're waiting to get started with the piles. So the steel pilings will come, and then we can start driving those piles, which it's been quite cold out over the past little while. I've heard that it is thick enough to drive the equipment on there. So we'll drive the piles first and then we wait, we're trying to time it quite nicely so that once the piles are finished, the wood arrives, so we don't have to pay less for storage. But that's still to be seen here. So, before the end of February, we should be looking at a different looking boardwalk.
That's wonderful news. Thank you, Chair.
That's up to them. Yeah, before I go to council, or to your main queue, I had a follow-up
Okay.
as well. The weather wasn't looking particularly favorable, but this cold snap that we've had recently, I'm assuming has been beneficial for the contractor.
Yes, absolutely.
Good, so does it look like everything's going to be able to be completed that was intended to this winter?
That's right. So if you look on the map here through to all of committee, I would say the sections that we may defer may be section BB/Y. It's red on the map, as well as AA. Simply because we may have to still come out of what is on the map here is section GG, but you can't see it. It's the red section south of the Maxwell Lake Bridge. That's the removable section, temporary section that administration finished a couple summers ago. And we still need to figure out a couple logistics around BBYA, as well as the brown section J, E, and D. So those ones might not get quite finished this year, with the removable section being the last section that we do very, very last, so that we can continue to move between the two sides of the boardwalk without having to essentially decimate work that we've already done. So just those couple of sections may remain, depending on access and things like that. That's still getting sorted out at this time. But the whole thing will be completed by the end of 26 for sure.
Thank you, Councilor Ross, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just so also council's aware, one of the things as Ms. Wade was talking about is storage. One of the things that's in the background is the coordination of timing when the materials come in, because there's a lot of materials and no place to put them. So that's another thing that we're, trying to configure as one goes in and then the materials show up. Just the council and the citizens are aware that that's one of the other hurdles that the contractors and administration is working on, because the amount, we don't want to pay storage any place, and we don't have space that we can as a town to have that storage. So just be aware, yeah, there's trailers going out and then trailers coming in, so yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Problem. Councilor Ross. Now to you.
Okay. One just quick question, where are we at with the pretzel? I understand from the report, it's requiring some more work, so it's usable. Is it usable now? That's you. Yeah, is it usable now, or?
As of this week, we have been short-staffed in parks. I'd have to double check with them to see if they fully got it open, but as you'll recall from a couple winters ago, we had similar freeze thaw. The gravel underneath creates patches, and the way that area is designed makes it tricky to create a uniform surface. So you could be skating along and then catch a patch of gravel. So at the time that this was written, it wasn't safe, and I know they've been struggling to prioritize that area, but I can certainly follow up.
So with that in mind, because my concern is it gets ready and it's supposed to be +5 here in a week or so, or week and a half. Is there a better place to put it? Like, is that green space by the curling rink maybe a better place in the wintertime to make an ice surface that's a pretzel type of area, rather than using the gravel with the difficulty of the nature of the terrain?
Thank you for the question through to all of committee. We definitely want to stay away from mimicking the challenges we're seeing with our outdoor rinks, which is putting them on a flat surface just because it's flat,
Okay.
and then the sun shines down on it all day.
Fair enough.
So this area is actually quite nice for the pretzel. It's got a bit of shade.
Right,
It's just different elements.
right, okay, no, that's fine, thank you.
Councilor Ross, Councilor Reese.
Thank you, sir. I want to circle back to the swimsuit spinner. We always encourage our citizens to be part of the budget process. Citizens did request that spinner. it was put into the capital budget. I don't know if it was, 2017 moving on or before that. But I would hate to see something that our citizens asked for and we take it away. So, we want to keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thanks, Dale. Real quick, speak to that. I mean, I'm all in favor of that too, but if it isn't working most of the time, what's the purpose? And if it's broken and we get complaints, I mean, if we can purchase a better one that's better suited for that area. I kind of look at it like our library had a 3D printer for a while, and it was a residential one that basically blew up because it was being used so much, right? So now we're looking at a different one. So I mean, if that's the case, if you're getting more complaints on it than you're actually using it, that's my only concern. So that's all. Thank you.
Councilor House. Anything further regarding reporting and status report? Great. Nothing else from the committee. We do have a couple of closed session items. Councilor House.
We can move and go into closed session.
Councilor House, we can move into closed session. And answer questions. Just wait for it to come up. Motion that we move into closed session at 6:05 PM. Maybe if you could please vote now. That's carried unanimously. Okay, we'll reconvene in 5 minutes in closed session.